We're going to look at the definition of discrete versus continuous, and this applies to question number 11 in homework 1-4. First, if I look in a dictionary like the Merriam, for continuity or continuous data, it's marked by uninterrupted extension in space, time, or sequence. Like the batteries provide enough power for up to 5 hours of continuous use. So that means within those 5 hours, the power is delivered by the batteries continuously. There would be no break if the power bit was connected to a device that was on, say, a radio or something like that. It would work continuously if they were fresh batteries. That's what continuous means. There's no breaks or gaps. That's how we use it in statistics. And so the continuous on the right means the no breaks or gaps in the data. Discrete is the opposite. There are gaps. Now, associated with that is also, if you have discrete data, it can be shown that the data is countable. So looking at continuous versus discrete, in summary, for discrete data, it's possible to count the values. For instance, if your discrete data set are the integers from 0 to 6, you can see, obviously, you can count them. And you go, starting from 0 to 6, you have 7 numbers. And not only that, there are gaps between the numbers. Like if you take the number 1 and 2, there is a number between 1 and 2, like for instance 1.5, and 1.5 being not an integer is not in the set. So there's a gap right there. If, however, I take all possible numbers between 0 and 9, that amounts to a continuous data set. In that set would be the numbers 1, the number 0, the number 5, but also 5.5, the number pi, pi like pi r squared, 3.141 to 2. Every one of those numbers is between 0 and 9, and it belongs there. So therefore, that data is continuous. It's also uncountable. If you try to count, if you could count forever, and you started counting the numbers between 0 and 9 for eternity, you would still not be able to enumerate every value between 0 and 9. So I like the gapping and breaking is the best way at this level to be able to identify continuous data. So let's say, take for instance, any two data values in A and B. If you can identify a value between A and B that does not belong to the data set, then your data is more than likely is going to be discrete. And so that's how we'll identify if it is discrete or continuous. So if you can identify such a value, it's discrete. If you cannot, it's continuous. So if in number 3 we found that value, your data is discrete. And then number 4, if you cannot find such a value, your data is continuous. I like to think of discrete data as one on a number line, discrete data on a number line as being one that has a lot of holes in it or cracks. If you were to pour water over it, over that part of the line, the water would just seep through. However, if you have a continuous solid line, the data would just hit the solid line and fall off the edges. So let's look at gap tests. So see if we can identify gaps, then it's discrete. So let's take similar ones to that are in problem 11. So let's take the amount of water in a fish tank. Suppose you have a 10-gallon fish tank. You can obviously fill it all the way to the top. in which case there's 10 gallons of water in it, or you could fill it to like halfway, 5 gallons. Now try to find a number between 5 and 10 that's not a possible value for the amount of water filled. I challenge you to find one you can. You can fill it to any amount. So there's no gap to be found, and the amount of water that you've put into a fish tank is continuous. Let's look at the number of home runs hit in a baseball game. Suppose in one baseball game the Red Sox hit 1 home run, and in another game they hit 2 home runs. Is it possible to have a game where they hit 1.5 home runs, a number between 1 and 2? That's certainly not possible. You either hit a home run or you don't. A half a home run is not a double. Miles per gallon for a car. Suppose you have a car that gets 18 miles per gallon. Your neighbor has a car that gets 25 miles per gallon. Can there possibly be another owner on your street that gets a car that makes, say, 22.1 miles per gallon? Well, certainly. So really any number you can think of between 18 and 25 is a possible value for the miles per gallon. So there's no gap to be found. It's continuous. The number of phone numbers in the contact list. Suppose your phone has 20 numbers in it, and your friend's phone has 31 numbers in it. Is it possible to have any possible value for phone numbers between 20 and 31? No, it's not possible. For instance, you can't have 26.1 phone numbers. Either you have a phone number or you don't have a phone number. Finally, let's look at the number of atoms in a glass of water. So we're back to water again. But in this case, it is discrete, because an atom, just like a home run, can't be broken into smaller parts, or a phone number cannot be broken into smaller parts. So let's say that we have 1 billion atoms in one glass of water, and your friend just happens to have 1 billion and 1. It's not possible to have 1.5 billion. You would have to split an H2O atom, and you know that that's not a good thing to do. So, in summary, if you can find a gap, then the data is going to be discrete. If you can't, it's going to be continuous. Notice also every one that we have number of in front, number of atoms, number of phone numbers, number of home runs, that is almost invariably going to be discrete. So there's a good chance, even before you do the gap test, that anything that starts with the phrase number of is going to be discrete.